One of them was the Straits of Gibraltar, which is generally accepted as being the Pillars of Hercules, but another more ancient and esoteric site is called the Pillars of Hercules, and that's off the northern tip of Morocco. And it's not actually pillars, but it's two twin caves, almost like a double-barrel shotgun, over and under shotgun, with one cave above the other. And by the great esotericists of the world, this was also known as the Pillars of Hercules, a little known fact, even in esoteric circles. But the findings for the directions given by Plato in the Timaeus state that it's beyond this particular, he's applying, this particular Pillars of Hercules, the two twin caves off the tip of Morocco. And it leads us to what's called the Eye of Africa, which is a remnant of an ancient city that they can't even date. But it's called the Eye of Africa, and many believe that it was destroyed by an immense tsunami in the Atlantic that washed ashore and washed the entire city. That it completely, we gave a PowerPoint on it, meets the criteria given to us by Plato. And after we had discussed the flooding or the destruction of Atlantis, we came to Egypt and the pyramids, which we see here. And we gave out some very new information that I had experienced, where the pyramid, before it became completed to the height of a capstone, indicated here by this dotted line, it was a truncated version of a pyramid. And it was used as a astronomical and astrological observatory. How do I know that? Sometimes on the path of discipleship, students are given glimpses of secrets of the wisdom teachings. Blavatsky didn't talk about it, to my knowledge. But I had an out-of-body experience where I was able to travel back in time about 80,000 years to the time when Blavatsky says the pyramid was truncated and it was built to the height of 50 stones. My experience out of body in the Akashic record led me to what is called they call it the King's Chamber. And it's this long tunnel-like shape that we see here. And I was in the tunnel, in the pyramid, down here, standing here. And as I looked out, I realized that what this was for the ancient Atlantean and ancient Egyptian hierophants was it was a telescope. And it was so dark inside this pyramid that it seemed to absorb the sunlight of the day and allowed me, standing down here, to look out through the daylight blue sky into the night sky of heaven. And I was able to see the stars and the planets perfectly, realizing that this was used as a somewhat crude pyramid, although it worked, and it had lenses that they would move up and down this shaft, and they could adjust it so that they could focus in on various planets and stars. And at the bottom of this area here in this tunnel was what appeared to me to be either a very brilliantly polished reflective floor, or, as I believe the ancient Chinese used, a pool of mercury. And it reflected perfectly what was seen through the telescopic lenses that were moved up and down this channel here. It was an incredible experience. Anytime you can get into the Akashic record, you're destined to have an incredible experience. And so we talked a little bit about that. We talked about I have to turn this around here real quick. We talked about the Bosnian pyramids, which my friend Sam Osmaganic, the person who discovered the pyramids in Bosnia, which are even larger than the pyramids in Egypt, claims that they've discovered some of the debris that was in these cement castings. They're like giant slabs of concrete. Whoever the people were that built this, probably, I believe, ancient Egyptians trying to escape the flood and resettle, were trying to duplicate the architectural features of Egypt from whence they fled. The Giza Plateau, it's well known scientifically that it was flooded for some time. And when the Mediterranean or the Atlantic or whatever it was that flooded northern Africa, it stayed flooded for thousands of years. And the people fled. And in that way, they began to populate barren, almost unpopulated areas of Europe, primarily in the old Yugoslavia or Serbia, Montenegro, Macedonia, Herzegovina, the what composed after World War II Yugoslavia, what we call the Slavic people. My friend Samuel Osmaganic, who was born and raised in this area, always wondered what these hills were. They didn't look right. They didn't look natural. And so he went up there one day with a shovel and began to dig, and he had covered these huge cement slabs. And he surmised, once they found out how old they were, that this was the origin of the pyramids in Egypt, but he got it all backwards. The pyramids in Egypt are 80,000 years old, and these pyramids in Bosnia may be 25,000 years old. He may be right about that. I think he is. What he's not right about in his assertion is that these pyramids in Bosnia, which are being financed and uncovered by UNESCO, a worldwide organization that funds the archaeological digs that are taking place here, it will prove eventually in time, not in my lifetime, but in some future 100 or 200 years from now. Thanks. Very interesting subject. Controversial, yes. We think we're on the right track, though, with our assertions about it. And so we talked about that. We talked about the migration, the formation of the fifth root race. And once we begin to understand the fifth root race, which is a very esoteric subject that most theosophists are aware of, we begin to fit pieces of a missing puzzle together. And the thing that I'm going to attempt to do tonight is to relate all of this to the most current events in Afghanistan. A little bit of a stretch to the non-esoteric mind, but to the esoteric mind, it's a very, I would say, a very astute approximation of what has happened and what is happening in the world. When Atlantis, which was a product of the fourth root race, was destroyed and the Giza Plateau was settled over periods of tens of thousands of years, there emerged through the Manu. A Manu is the leader of a race of people. He incarnates variously throughout immense periods of time to lead people in their evolution. He's a lawgiver. He gives laws. The deep esoteric mystery of Moses and the Bible story is that Moses is a Manu figure. He was a lawgiver, and he gave us the 10 Commandments. And he was the force behind the creation of the fifth root race, the Aryan race. I don't know if we don't have our map here tonight. It's okay.
All right.
But we're knowledgeable enough, I think, most of us as a group, to kind of get an idea of what the terrain and the perimeter of the Mediterranean Sea is. And certainly we know where Israel is and Iran and all of those countries. Well, what happened was the Manu, Vaivasvata, the Hindu teachings give us a name, began this mass exodus out of the Giza Plateau across the Middle East down into India for a time of about 25,000 years, and then back up through India into Afghanistan and spreading out through portions of Central Asia, back into Europe. So the point of interest that has been tickled my fancy and has excited me in the occult or esoteric explorations that I've done is that we know that a root race, there's these 7 root races that will appear and disappear, and that each root race has 7 sub-races. And so one of the sub-races, several of the sub-races that we talked about in one of our previous lectures concerning World War II and Adolf Hitler and the esoteric significance of World War II, was that Hitler was not a Manu, he was a sub-race Manu. He was the sub-race Manu for the 4th sub-race of the 5th root race, the Aryan root race. And that Winston Churchill, as I explained, was the sub-race Manu for the 5th sub-race of the 5th root race, which is the Anglo-Saxon sub-race. And that Joe Stalin was a sub-race Manu for the 3rd sub-race of the 5th root race. You almost have to write this stuff down, and you have to do research. You have to read a really good book, is Leadbeater's book called Man, Whence, How, and Whither. And in the book, he explains these races and these tribes and how some of the tribes were completely wiped out in wars that they had fought. The thing that began to excite my interest in my own esoteric investigation into the root races and into Hitler and his purpose and what he did in world history was a clue that Alice Bailey gave us in her writings. And when students at the time of World War II, people who were her students, asked her, they said, what is all this war? What is this all about? And Alice Bailey simply stated, it's an intertribal war. Well, nobody knew what she was talking about. Still don't. But what she was talking about was she was talking about a war within the 5th root race. race. It was the war between the Teutonic, and that was all Hitler ever talked about. Talked about the race. He was going to reverse. That was the symbol of the swastika. The swastika. It points in two directions. There's a swastika of Hitler's that points in one direction, rotates in one direction, clockwise, and another that rotates counterclockwise. And he would have these incredible ceremonies where men holding torches would form a perfectly lit swastika, and then they would begin to move in rotation, and the swastika would rotate. And he actually believed that he was turning and changing the wheels of evolution. His real purpose was to something very esoteric, very few students know very much about it, if anything, is to destroy what we call in esoteric parlance the dweller on the threshold of Europe. The dweller, each of us has a dweller. It's our lower, most loathsome aspects of our character and personality. And so too do nations have dwellers. And all of Europe had a powerful dweller. It was at war for thousands of years, and the dweller needed to be destroyed. And Hitler, as a subrace Manu, was able to excite to the degree of hysteria, the German people to follow him to the bitter end, which destroyed almost all of Europe. Spain kind of got by under Franco, who himself was a socialist and admirer of Hitler. But Mussolini, we all know about Mussolini. And then there was the Oriental element that came in Japan and China, not a part of the Aryan race, but a part of the later factions, elements of the Atlantean root race, Chinese, Sino-Japanese, 6th, 7th subraces of the Aryan root race. Mao Zedong killed, it said, 100 million possibly of his own people. So these guys were ruthless, but they acted on the first ray. Hitler, we had a beautiful, we'll show it in one of our future lectures. We did a ray analysis of both Hitler and Blavatsky, and they both had first ray souls and first ray personalities. The masters recently, 15 years ago, said that what America needed most was a president with a first ray soul and a first ray personality. That's what they needed, that America needed to show strength in the world, because we're reaching the end of the Piscean age and we're in the birthing period of the Aquarian age. And anytime the birthing process takes place, it's very painful, whether it's a woman having a baby or you're birthing something as difficult to comprehend as a new age. And we are birthing a new age. And so the turmoil that we see in the world is filled with difficulties of all kinds. And part of it is that the fourth ray energy is coming in and it brings upheaval. The fourth ray energy, we say, is one of the things that we commonly talk about and identify it as being as art and harmony through conflict. I'm beginning to see new art forms in the world. Many of my esoteric friends agree that yes, there are new art forms. I've shown them over the years of people entertaining with, had a woman that had a bunch of different objects on a stage floor and a huge audience gathered, and she began to assemble these objects, and she was able to balance them. And they were things like sticks and feathers of birds and all kinds of different objects. And she built this incredible structure and was able to balance it perfectly. A new expression, probably, of the fourth ray. But Bailey said also when the fourth ray energy began to come in, and our own music, rock and roll, the blues, and every kind of music that you can imagine, rap music, it's all a product of the incoming fourth ray. But Bailey said something very interesting. I've been talking about it for 10 years, that when the fourth ray comes in, one of the unusual, bizarre things that would happen would be that the blue flowers of the planet would begin to disappear, and eventually they'll vanish. They still exist, but 10 years ago, there was an article in Scientific American magazine about the inexplicable disappearance of blue flowers all across the planet. I have it in one of my PowerPoints. It's a PowerPoint that we'll probably show in the future. Is called Ancient History, New Science, and Glimpses of the Future. And I explain a lot of these things in that particular DVD. So we'll have to show it sometime to our Zoom audience. Maybe this winter would be a good time for that. But anyway, getting back to what's happening in the world and all of the chaos and the turmoil, is that the old Piscean ways are dying out, and new approaches to all things are being born into the world. There's a lot of the old sins and products of the dweller on the threshold of America, which I need to tell you about. In World War II, when the dweller, the sum total of the evil of the continent of Europe, was destroyed, although there are elements that exist, but it's generally taught in the esoteric schools that the dweller was destroyed. It's said that Hitler had the support of the spirit of Shambhala, the shambhalic force. And we know even microcosmically that when the forces of Shambhala come into your life is turned into a shambles. And that's a good thing, because you begin to rebuild and reconstruct yourself. You'll never be the person you were before, because now you've had to reconstruct yourself out of the fire, the phoenix nest of fire, and you're reborn in something different. And that's where the esoteric becomes so important in the life of the individual students. I always tell people, the most important thing that can happen to you is to discover what are called the wisdom teachings. For me, it was theosophy, and it's a stepping stone. It's been a stepping stone in my life. The occult prophecy said that these teachings would be given out in 3 waves, or 3 great outpourings, from 1875 to 1925. That's a 50-year period called the preparatory period. The second outpouring was largely through Bailey, but there were people that overlapped and bridged the gap. It was Leadbeater and Steiner and others. And that 50-year period lasted from 1925 to 1975. Where now, and that period was known as the intermediate period, a 50-year period. So the preparatory period, the intermediate period, and the period that we're in now, called the revelatory period. And so we're having incredible revelations about the mysteries of science and archaeology and the history of our earth and of our spiritual purpose and intent. And the doors are flung open, ready now to receive a new age. This revelatory period began in 1975. It was part of my soul's purpose to be involved in the revelatory period of mankind's awakening. The Bible talks about revelations. Many very esoteric people who I have known, I mean, highly, highly spiritual, highly esoteric people, have said that the true Christ was actually St. John the Divine, who wrote Revelations. And when you read Revelations, it's very different from all of the other texts in the New Testament. It's completely different. And it makes a great deal of sense if you believe in the three outpourings of the preparatory, the intermediate, and the revelatory period. And so we are in a period of revelations, and immense things are happening in the world. The events of the last few days have been a tremendous concern to me from an esoteric perspective, by virtue of the fact that Afghanistan, a country that we don't really know a whole lot about, was probably the real focus point of the Manu at a certain time in the development of the first subrace of the fifth root race, the Aryan race. Of course, it's the Hindu people, the first subrace. The second was the Iranian. The third were the Celtics, generally accepted as being the Celtics. The fourth, the Teutonic, and then, of course, the fifth, where we're at now, the Anglo-Saxon subrace. And there's a reason why the Anglo-Saxon race has been dominant, is because it's energized. It's energized by the spiritual hierarchy. It's energized by the Manu. It's not some fluke that the most powerful countries in the world for the last several hundred years, 200 years probably, have been the countries of Anglo-Saxon origin. And that includes Canada and Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. I lived in South Africa for a time with an elderly couple. Extraordinary people. Some night I'll tell a story about them and the incredible things that I experienced when I was in their presence. But in fact, that picture of DK, it's up on the bookcase there behind me, belonged to this lady in South Africa, her and her husband. She was a personal friend of Annie Gowland, who painted the portrait of DK when she had been in the Lamassery, where DK was the abbot. She painted 5 small portraits of various sizes of DK. She said that the memory of him was burned into her brain. She painted him back in the 1930s. And I prize it highly. It's faded. The colors are greatly faded because it laid out on my friend Louise Busby's coffee table. Of course, the South African sunlight beating down on it for years faded the colors, which originally were very intense blues and oranges, colors like the reds, gold. Anyway, the primary interest that I had in giving this talk dealt with the idea of the Afghan people and also what Bailey talked about, and Leadbeater and others, my teacher, Douglas Baker, talked about the death and the dying out of the sixth ray, the ray of devotion and idealism. Very powerful ray. Jesus was a sixth ray master. The Catholic Church has very powerful sixth ray attributes. In seventh ray, ceremony and order, the qualities of the seventh ray. But the sixth ray, this whole idea of devotion and idealism, it's really dying out in the world. And the rays that are coming in that will change the world, the fourth ray we talked about, and also the third ray and the seventh ray. My own ray analysis shows that I have a seventh ray personality. So we do ray analysis for people, but it's tough to do because you have to ask a lot of questions. But it's part of living in the time of revelations, in a revelatory period where great truths are coming out about the rays. Blavatsky only inferred the rays. She never went into any detail on the rays. Very few theosophists ever discuss the rays, and when they do, their lectures are usually pretty weak and lacking in detail and information. They also don't discuss astrology, which in the Aquarian age will be identified as a lingua sacra, a sacred language. And that's really what it is. We showed in Biden's horoscope the aspects that he had in his horoscope, where there was a stellium of planets in Scorpio, 5 planets in Scorpio, and the impact that that would make on his life and is now making on his life. I'm hoping that in another 3 or 4 weeks, I've got Donald Trump's horoscope and I've got Kamala Harris's horoscope, and we're going to take a cursory look at those horoscopes. But we've done Hillary's in the past, and we did Uma Abedin's solar chart. We had, when we did Fauci's, we also had to do a solar chart because we didn't know the time of his birth. So we did a solar chart. Proved to be unbelievably accurate. It's on one of our other, it's on YouTube. Is it, Julie, is it on YouTube? Okay. So you can go to YouTube, and what's it under? Esoteric Lectures? Or
under your name. They have to find you.
Yeah, but there's another David Zimmerman on there. I think one of them is Bob Dylan's brother.
Well, yes, but
his real name was Bob Zimmerman.
So let me just look very quickly.
Which was my dad's name and my brother's name, Bob Zimmerman. But is it under Esoteric Lectures, or is it?
It is, yeah.
Esoteric Lectures. So hopefully we'll be able to get all these Zoom talks on YouTube. That's what we're striving to do. And this winter, we're thinking the format might change a little bit, in that we may not have a meeting every Wednesday. We may do it every other Wednesday or once a month on a Wednesday. And it'll be me giving a lecture or somebody giving a lecture. And it won't be a potluck dinner for people to attend. But there'll be esoteric teachings, and that's the important thing. So the idea that I wanted to get across to you tonight with the events that have happened with the 9/11, the collapse of the World Trade Towers. I've told this story numerous times, but it's important, I think, for the audience on Zoom tonight, the Zoom meeting, is that in August of 2001, I was told by a powerful teacher that I would begin to have experiences in conscious mediumship. went right over my head. I didn't know what he was talking about. So the next day was the 16th of August, and I had to fly out of Rome for Detroit, which I did. I got home, I think it was the weekend. That following Monday, I went to work up till the Labor Day weekend, which I was off, and I was home, and had the weekend to myself. And I was in my meditation room, and I had come out of meditation, and there at the end of a long green sofa were the images of the World Trade Towers, but they were in scale model. They were about 5 feet tall, the two trade towers side by side. And as I stared at them, they began to implode and collapse right before my eyes. I tried to rationalize what was happening, which is the first mistake that we make when we sometimes have conscious mediumship presented to us. And so I saw the image over and over again several times in that 3-day period from September 1st to the 3rd. And then, of course, on the 11th, the morning of the 11th, I had to get up and go to work, and I had a dream. And in the dream, I had astrally projected to the southern tip of Long Island, of Manhattan, the Battery area where the towers were. And I was, I'd say, about a mile above the World Trade Towers. And I looked down and I saw what looked like 2 tornado clouds, and then realized as I zoomed in with my astral vision, magnified the experience visually, I saw that it wasn't 2 tornadoes, it was the World Trade Towers had collapsed, and that was my vision about 2 weeks earlier. These are the kind of things that happen once the construction of the Antakarana has taken place. But it's important to remember, because a lot of these things that I'm trying to sew together, many of them have come through a different level of consciousness than just plain rational thinking. And that's where we're at today with the events that have just taken place in the last 10 or 11, 12 days in Afghanistan. And here we are with the sixth ray dying out, and who are the most savage, violent, idealistic sixth ray people on the planet? Afghans. There you go. The Taliban, all those people. ISIS, that's all sixth ray stuff. Blind devotion. Kill the enemies to an extreme, the sixth ray to an extreme. Who are they? Well, they're remnants of the first subrace of the fifth root race. And it may be, if we use esoteric logic, to me, it makes a hell of a lot of sense that it would go back to the origin of a dominant race, an Aryan race, not in the sense that Hitler talked about, in the true esoteric sense of the dominant race at the time, which Leadbeater said had, back in the 30s, he said they had reached the halfway point in their life cycle. And because the fifth root race was at the halfway point of its life cycle, it would experience tremendous destruction. Well, he knew what was going to happen. He saw it. He saw World War II coming. He saw the destruction of Europe and of other places and areas of the world where mass destruction and death took place within the fifth root race. And so here we are with the Afghan war, a war that we fought for 20 years since 9/11, poured trillions of dollars into the war effort, and then just pulled out in a matter of a couple days, and have left a lot of people stranded there who I am very concerned about for their well-being and safety. We'll see. There's a lot of things that could happen, both bad and good. There may be some great good come out of this. But as the sixth ray dies out, however long that's going to take, I'm not sure. But that kind of blind devotion that's being expressed by radical Muslims will die off. You have to also factor into the equation that the Muslim religion, of the major religions of the world, the Muslim religion is the youngest of the major religions. And that factors into the equation, and that they're so dominantly sixth ray, to the abhorrent end of the spectrum, to the most vicious kind of ideology that the sixth ray could muster up, is, I believe, signaling the death of the sixth ray. And it's when that sixth ray dies out that that kind of radical, hate-filled behavior won't exist. And that will open the doorway to the age of Aquarius. We've been promised in the esoteric teachings that 2025 is an important date. A new world renaissance is coming. And we're going to have to end it there for tonight. Are there any questions that anybody has that they want to ask, either here in the audience or on Zoom tonight? We've got a couple of minutes and we can take some questions. Have you got people on there?
Yes, there are people, and if they have questions, they can ask, and they just have to unmute themselves.
Okay, yeah, just unmute if you want to ask a question. I'll try to answer. Don't guarantee that I can, but we'll try. I know it's a lot of material.
David,
Yeah.
this is Kim.
Kim, yeah, hi, Kim.
I was struck with your dream about, in your dream of the World Trade Center. You woke up with this sense, and I had a similar experience as well with Trump being voted in.
Mhm.
I woke up, I didn't know what the end result was of the presidential race, but I emerged from my dreams crying, just this overwhelming sense of despair. With the World Trade Center, when that took place, I sort of, in my reference someplace, Nostradamus has an interesting quatrain that refers to the two princes, the house of glass of the one brother will consume the other. Now I'm paraphrasing it. I don't have the exact, but I do have it in my library marked because it was so, I recalled. It also said the gold would turn into rivers. It's a very specific quatrain that could be interpreted as the 9/11 experience. And of course, in Nostradamus, this is the Babylon, right? The
Mhm.
Forgive me, I can't think. Lady of Babylon. At any rate,
The Whore of
the
Babylon.
the harlot is what came of Babylon. That these in this quatrain it refers to that experience, and that the rivers would run gold. So as I listened to emerging news, we learned that at the base of the excuse me, the trade center were vaults that had gold bullion,
Mhm.
as well as, of course, the photographs, the photography of John F. Kennedy. Many were being stored there. So I'd ask you to, reference back if this is of any importance to you. But I'd ask people to just look at that quatrain, revisit Nostradamus in a much bigger way.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
that's what I offer. So when you asked
Okay.
us if there's any questions, I'm going to go back and review Alice Bailey and
Yeah.
the race. I'm going to
Yeah.
go make it a point to read
Good
that.
idea. Right.
So
Yeah.
thank you. I'm
Yeah.
thrilled. I'm
Yeah.
so
Thanks
grateful.
for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Kim.
Yeah. Good to see you too.
All
And I'm
right.
so grateful. This is a place I'll be coming to
Okay.
learn.
Good. Yeah. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Just unmute. If you want to ask a question. Any question is okay. It's not, don't feel intimidated to ask a question.
I think I have a question.
Julia has a question.
Yes, you were saying the fourth ray is coming, right?
Mhm.
So harmony is coming from the conflict.
Yes. Yeah. I'll
So,
give you a real good example of it.
okay, so what does that mean to our universe? I mean, what does that mean to us?
It means that the Aquarian age is a benign age, and it's ruled by Jupiter, which is the most benign of all of the planets. If you have Jupiter in the 11th house, it means that you have some benign energies within a group where you may be, especially if you have karma there, your karma would be benign. I have Saturn and Jupiter in the 11th house, and my karma is benign. I've had horrible things have happened to me in my life, but they have been benign in that I've been able to transmute them, terrible events, into good things, into positive growth. So Jupiter is the esoteric ruler of Aquarius, and the Aquarian age will be ruled by Jupiterian energies. The great hope of the Piscean age was for the universal brotherhood of mankind, which never happened. But we will experience that in the age of Aquarius. And it'll carry over into, I believe, into the age of Capricorn.
So what you're saying is the world will be more peaceful and
Yes.
united?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but how come then everybody is fighting right now?
Because we're witnessing the death of the Piscean age. And so it's violent. It's like the old saying, what was it? Somebody brought it up last week, and it's so apropos. People, a lot of times before they die, they'll get better. You think, God, he's going to breathe his last breath. And then all of a sudden there's this surge of energy, and they wake up and they're talking to you and telling you stuff that happened back in, their youth, childhood. And that's what's happening with the sixth ray. It's the last dying breath of the sixth ray. And it's going to die out. It's already dying out. The Catholic churches in Detroit are empty. You can't find one that has any size of a devoted clergy. or a membership. Prime example of the sixth ray of religion. And it will happen to the Muslims as well, that the Muslim religion will die out because the sixth ray fanaticism will die out as the sixth ray dies out.
Hello, David.
Yes,
Good morning. This is Siva Prasad from India.
yes. How are you?
Yes. Yes, fine. I want to ask a question like why our Theosophical Society membership is not growing. Such a beautiful wisdom in this Theosophical teachings, and it is good for the humanity, but still the number is not growing. Youth are not really coming up
Excellent
and
question. Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent
why?
question. Yeah. That's one of my concerns too, and it has been. And I get in a lot of trouble with the Theosophical Society, who say they love the truth, but I sometimes wonder how much they love it. What the hierarchy does is they create organizations like the Theosophical Society, and they energize them. And then the energy sustains the organization for a while, and then the hierarchy pulls away. They haven't energized the society in 80 years. The crucifixion of C.W. Leadbeater, unjust crucifixion by a bunch of old Victorian aged women, was kind of the death nail and the sign of the hierarchy pulling away from the society. And so the society has not been energized in 80 or 90 years, probably almost 90 years now. And it's been left to flounder or flourish or whatever it's going to do on its own. Yeah, I live in the Detroit area, and there's 5.5 million people, and we have 48 dues-paying members at the Theosophical Society. When you confront them about it, they say things like, oh, well, we just want quality people. But they don't really have quality people. They just have people. And it's a problem. It's all across the planet. Doesn't matter what country you go to where there's a Theosophical Society, they're all the same. It's filled with a bunch of old people that are set in their ways. They don't want anything new. You have to give the same spiel, devotional, ad nausea, repeating the teachings. You know, the real truth is that the secret doctrine, I love Blavatsky. She knows it. She knows that I love it. And the great truth is that the theosophy, as they practice it, is basically theosophical fundamentalism. And they don't want to hear about Alice Bailey. They say they do, but very few of them really do. And they have never put together what I explained to you tonight about the three outpourings. They get really creeped out when you talk about that. But in the new age, the coming new age, when I'm dead and gone, the world will understand that, yes, there were three outpourings of wisdom teachings from 1875 to 1925, from 1925 to 1975, and from 1975, which is why I'm here on earth, is to help bring the revelatory teachings out from 1975 to 2025. And in 2025 will be the externalization of the spiritual hierarchy of the planet. And that's what I'm looking forward to, a time of a new world renaissance. And these young souls that are being born into the world, many are super gifted children. They're old, ancient souls with tremendous knowledge and insights. And that's the hope of the world, is the Aquarian age and the new people that are coming in.
Thank you. Thank you.
I hope that answered your question.
Yes,
But
yes.
that's what it is, and that's exactly the way I see it. And the ashram that I am a part of, that was just common knowledge and was accepted as being true. It's just not energized. Other groups are like ions, the ions group. Got a lot of people with dedication and money to give to it to help it flourish. But it too will only be energized for a certain time. You're not energized indefinitely. So, oh yeah, Randy's got a question.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we brought it up that the fourth ray, is that what it is?
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
fourth ray is going to come in and take over where the sixth ray was? Or is that in just one area of the world?
No, the whole world will be affected by the incoming fourth
Well,
ray. What's
Can you help us flush out what this fourth ray energy, we know it's art through conflict, but what
harmony,
harmony through,
art and harmony through conflict? Yeah, I'll give you a really good example. It's one of the best examples I can think of. We have to go back to the esoteric significance of Hitler in World War II. If you would have told somebody in 1943 that in another 30 years or less, the greatest allies of America would be the Germans and the Japanese, they would have locked you up. Yet they are among our greatest allies in the world, are the Germans and the Japanese. Harmony through conflict. Fourth ray. So the fourth ray was already beginning to express itself 80 years ago when the war started. There's always elements of the ray, but it's gaining its in power. Now we're beginning to see more and more of it. The sixth ray of devotion is dying out. Although the fourth ray and the sixth ray are both love rays, they're related but aren't related. The sixth ray will die out, and the third ray, fourth ray, and seventh ray will become the prominent rays. Even the fifth ray is dissipating and is dying out to a very great extent. So,
Hey, Dave. So now Hitler, what was that ray? That was
he was a first ray guy.
the first ray. He was the guy that was the first ray.
He was the subrace Manu, and he was using many. Bailey talked about it. I'm not an expert on it, so I can't go into great detail, but I can see the wisdom of what they're saying about Hitler was that he had a powerful first ray personality. He had a first ray soul. He may have even had a first ray monad. And he brought in this tremendous destruction into the world to help kill. He did horrible, evil things, or people who followed him did, and brought destruction to Europe. And in so doing, destroyed what's called in esoteric parlance, the dweller on the threshold. Was killed off. The dweller on the threshold of America was never killed off. And because of that, it's brought concern to the spiritual hierarchy of our planet. We will have to destroy our dweller. And I believe that our dweller will be destroyed when the swamp is drained. And one of the ways the swamp will be drained in Washington, D.C. is through fourth ray energy expressing itself as decentralized government. Give the power back to the states. It's already happened. Turn on the news, and they'll tell you that Florida's not going to obey the laws, neither is Texas, and they're all fighting, and they're trying to control it all from Washington, D.C. And the way of the fourth ray is city-state government. It's decentralized governments. Think of Europe 500 years ago, when the fourth ray was the dominant ray in Florence, Italy, the birthplace of art and commerce and creativity, and still is elements of it existing there now. I was there 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, and I marvel there were no vacant buildings in Florence, Italy.
In 8:30.
It's 8:30, is it? Okay, yeah, we'll have to go. So anyway, I hope you got something out of the talk tonight. And next Wednesday, it'll be Gary Contesti, and he'll give a presentation on some very interesting, abstruse and esoteric Hindu teachings. So tune in then. Thanks a lot.
Yes, we
Okay.